You want me to put that on my Tudor?
It's not you. Yes, you might anticipate that would be the round of applause that your glorious narrator receives upon addressing the microphone. But it's actually the cheers of delight that have originated as a consequence of news that has just recently emerged that Harry's wife isn't going to be the replacement for the Feinstein Senate seat. Red State tells us California Governor Gavin Newsom selects Feinstein Senate replacement. In the wake of the death of Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, Governor Gavin Newsom has chosen her replacement to fill in the seat until the next election cycle. Politico first reported on Sunday evening that Emily's List president LaFonza Butler has been selected to take the job. Newsom's selection of Butler comes at a moment of immense change in California's political establishment, with millions of people still mourning the death of Feinstein, the barrier-breaking Senate lioness. Meanwhile, the California governor, who was mentored by Feinstein, has been grappling with his own personal grief and the political ramifications of his choice to succeed her. The people who spoke with Politico ahead of the announcement were granted anonymity to disclose internal deliberations. Butler is registered to vote in Maryland, but will switch her registration to California. Newsom faced considerable pressure around the decision after first pledging to name a black woman to the seat. Several potential nominees said publicly they were not interested. Some others privately expressed trepidation about accepting a short-term appointment and then immediately having to gear up for what would be a 5-month campaign. It appears that Newsom made the quick decision in order to stave off mounting campaigns from allies and politicians seeking to convince him to put their preferred candidates in. Newsom had previously stated he would be picking someone to babysit the seat until the next election cycle. However, he may have been too quick in his decision. Records indicate Butler has not lived in the state for 2 years. It is unclear if Butler would run for the seat in the 2024 election cycle. Other candidates, such as Representatives Adam Schiff and Katie Porter, had previously announced their intention to, as had Republican Barbara Lee. There had been speculation that Feinstein was holding on to her seat to allow Schiff, who was handpicked by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to take the job, to run and take over. However, Feinstein's death, coupled with Newsom's previous vow to fill the empty seat with a black woman, have complicated matters. If Butler, after changing her residence to California, were to run, she would have an incumbency advantage that often makes it difficult for challengers to break through. Accordingly, LaFonza Butler has found herself the chosen one for Gavin Newsom, as reported there by Red State. So it's not you, Harry's wife. Now, how would this make Harry's wife feel? She's touted as a potential replacement. As I've explained to you, politics is ever so tasty to the narcissist, and yet she's not chosen. Well, it might be that Newsom may well have spoken to her and already explained that she wasn't to be chosen, although I doubt that he would necessarily spend the time explaining to people it's not you, but rather deal with any queries that might arise thereafter and simply chooses the replacement. For Harry's wife, she would of course consider that she ought to have been in the running. She may not have said anything as such, but remember, the narcissist expects those around them to understand what their wants and requirements and needs are, even when they're not actually properly communicated. This is why the narcissist is so often disappointed with you, because you're expected to read the mind of the narcissist, to understand what the narcissist wants, what the narcissist requires, and therefore your failure to do so, and when you provide a rather puzzled look when the narcissist challenges you, means you're doubled down on being a despicable and treacherous individual. For Harry's wife, she would have expected Newsom to have recognised that she would be interested, and she would have expected herself to have been picked. Why? She's Harry's wife. She's amazing. She's brilliant. She's the one. It doesn't matter that she didn't actually express any interest in it. She should be considered as a matter of right. This, of course, may not dissuade her for political ambitions in 2024, and that remains to be seen. But the fact that she has not been selected will wound her. There's no fuel provided in the failure to select her because the decision has been made to appoint Butler without saying anything to Harry's wife. Therefore, her narcissism will essentially guide her to deal with this rejection. It's unlikely that she would contact Gavin Newsom to say, "Oi, why didn't you pick me?" Although in some instances, certain narcissists would behave in such a demanding way to say of the decision-maker, "You're wrong, you ought to have picked me." It's a little bit like arguing with a referee in a football match. It's not going to actually get you anywhere. The decision isn't going to be overturned, but it would afford the narcissist some fuel and the subconscious sensation of control. But with Harry's wife being essentially a coward, her narcissism isn't going to drive her to contact Gavin Newsom and demand an explanation as to why she was not chosen, or, even further, to change it. She will possibly make mention of it to those around her, complaining about how she's been overlooked, possibly revising history. "He said I would be considered in the event that Feinstein would die." "Really?" says the lackey. "I didn't know that." "Oh yes," said Harry's wife. "He can't be trusted. He's gone back on his promise." Her narcissism causes her to rewrite history for the purposes of enabling her to assert control over Newsom indirectly and over whoever she's talking to directly. It therefore makes up something so she can use that to gain that control. Alternatively, she simply rejects it and said, "Well, I wasn't interested anyway. I'm going to wait my turn. There are better opportunities ahead." It's likely that her narcissism will go down that route to suggest, "No, I wasn't actually interested in it, so it's little wonder that he didn't pick me." Of course, she did expect to be picked, and when news broke, it wounded her. But her narcissism steps in with the immediacy to utilize one of the three assertions of control, quite possibly by staying in a position of withdrawal and utilizing the rejection of the decision so as to portray to the outside world that she wasn't bothered by it. But if initially, it will have hit her. She will have been wounded by this failure. It would have caused the ignition of fury. There might even have been a shriek of distaste emanating in Monty's shit show. Before then, her narcissism scrambles to assert control by suggesting that she wasn't interested in it. It wasn't her cup of tea. She wants to do it properly. She wants to be elected. She wouldn't want to do it by the back door. All of this is errant bollocks, because of course, if she had been selected, she'd have embraced it willingly, because it would enable her to get on the fast track to some juicy prime aims. No doubt many Californians are delighted that it's not Harry's wife, but that doesn't mean that the prospect of her attempting to get into politics has gone away for good. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.